How did the show at Exeter Phoenix come about?
Yeah, well, Matt Burrows, the curator here, got in contact with me and he'd seen my work at the Zabludowicz Collection and just really liked it and said that he wanted to give me a bigger stage for this type of work, and he could see the potential in that. And so he sent me some floor plans, and I just realised actually the size of this space. I mean, I knew it was a little out, you know, it's quite a way out of London, it's quite a way to go, but I think it's really interesting to, as an artist, to go and work in regional areas of the country rather than everything being centred in London, and you get the same crowd coming to see you again and again. I've got nothing against the London scene. It's just that sometimes you think, wouldn't it be great to get some work that is very direct? I think my work is quite direct visually to a different type of demographic. This show gave me the chance to bring works that I'd done with Data Editions together, edited together, and have them with a really large projector that we were able to get through the Arts Council, because this was Arts Council funded. And then I was able to do much more ambitious sculptural pieces. And then also the Headbone is included in the exhibition, which was at the Zabludowicz Collection. So it was just nice to see all these works that I've been badgering away at over the last year and a half, and some new pieces come together in such a big space. And for Matt Burrows to make that happen has been amazing, really.
And could you talk a little bit about the new work, and also the title of which also happens to be the title of the show, Displacement Behaviour, and also about the performance that's happening in there?
It's the Data Editions videos I did with David Grin for their online site, and it's been re-edited together, and I've created a different soundtrack to it, and also when we were applying for the Arts Council money, we thought it would be great to get a local musician to come in, and it occurred to me something like a harp would be, it's so romantic and eccentric that it really fitted into the style of the work, the romantic, spectacular, but also you know, strange and eerie. She's reacting to the film itself.
So it's totally improvised, and there was no sort of choreography or
No. She listened to the soundtrack maybe once or twice and said she wanted to work with the immediate reaction to the work.
How have you found the sort of collaborative process for this show?
Yeah, it's difficult to let go of control, and I do enjoy collaboration, and I've done it throughout my short career, and I've also did it at school. But in this case, the collaborative piece was done with a group that helped me from the Preston Union, which is sort of an art group here in Exeter, and some others from the college. We were able to build a collective installation, which is for me and it was an interesting activity to let other people take control of my work. It was a little bit scary, but also really rewarding, because I was able to gain a sort of freedom within the work. And really it's something I was aiming for. I wanted to make pieces of work that were spontaneous, and knowing that if I were totally in control, that would mean that I would probably design it too much, devise the situation too much.
Specifically about the new displacement behaviour, there's this 3D image with glitches, and then in front of that, or behind that, there's the 16mm sort of projection, which is more, so it's flickers. Is that an attempt formalistically to demonstrate the potential both analogue and digital have for error and fault, potentially, and they're on an even keel in that respect?
I don't think it was intentional, to be honest. I mean, there's anachronism in that work, the mix of old and new technologies. It's one that's what happened in the first piece in rehearsal. And it's something perhaps I'd say it wasn't a new thing because it was in my first piece, whereas the headbone piece that was at the Zabludowicz Collection is starting to play with the illusion of space and the figures in a different way, in a way that is more about how the user interacts with those program spaces that you find on the screen. As displacement behaviour was made last year, at exactly this time of year, I was still using that format, which creates the illusion of the figure being present in the room. And so when I started doing that, it was just a clip I had of 16mm, and yeah, I did like that contradiction or the anachronism of 16mm with some technology that had just come out, the 3D scanning. It's something like 123 Catch. It's an app you can get on your phone, and many times I've done scans just off my phone of things. Yeah.
So could you talk a bit more about that scanning process and how it sort of differs from other scanning processes?
Well, it doesn't really. I mean, it differs from scanning that they use that's not photographic, which uses distances. It's much more user-friendly. I don't have to spend hours creating points and having really expensive equipment and programs, but it's a little bit idiosyncratic in its nature, so you have to work with it and sort of let go of things. A bit similar to the collaborative work, you have to say, okay, it's got something glitchy in it, or it's got some artifact in it, and take that as part of the work. But this scanning technology, talking more about the future, has been really good for me on the move, because you just have the app on your iPhone and you can be in the street and you want a facade of a building, or you can capture. I've caught people asleep on trains. Yeah, and so because as long as they keep still, you can capture this little fragment of this person asleep on a train, or a corner in London, an abandoned house in Stoke-on-Trent. So this archive that I'm building up, it's a lot more interesting to me now, because I'm sort of distancing from the figurative that you see in displacement behaviour. I'm not discounting that. It's a great piece of work, and it's just that I feel that I've explored that part of the technology and the figure enough for now. The animation itself is, I look at trying to reveal the best parts of the object. So let's call the figures objects, just as the facades of the buildings are. There are parts that are just not so interesting, and others that are. And it's like if you go to, I don't know, to a garden as a person seeing, you select the parts that you find exciting through the way that you are looking and perceiving things. I mean, not perceiving, but the way that your eyes are running. And so I try, when I'm animating these figures, to think that way, to think sincerely through the way that I like to see the object explored in and out.
This might seem like an obvious question, given that I understand your process now. Does the physical inform the virtual, or is it the other way round?
Okay, it's a good question. Well, it was the physical that informed the virtual originally. But weirdly, the work wouldn't be what it is without those. I mean, if it were just a photograph, then of those pieces in real life, in person, it's not so interesting. It's when they are virtual that they become themselves a different essence. And so then that started to inform the way that I worked the performances. So yeah, it's chicken egg thing, but it wouldn't have been the work it is now without me learning from the virtual and what happens through that process.
And with regards to the objects that you tape to the figures, they seem to derive from your immediate environment. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was the original. The original work was.
Is that a sort of response to the distance that you could feel in the digital? What you're more interested in is the tactile potential of the digital.
Yeah, and let's begin with my first piece of work, Rehearsal. It was everything that would surround me and what I could get hold of. As I've evolved and as the work's evolved, it's sort of spanned out into taking larger things, like some strange snowball monster that sucks things in. And just recently, like I said, I've started to collect spaces which perhaps inform my memories, just like photography, but because they're three-dimensional, it feels like I've taken these fragments and they become something else. So a lot of the buildings that I scanned in Stoke have actually been demolished, or 2 or 3. So this is sort of a weird record of something on the brink of its final, days, the end of its life. And so I feel I've appropriated it through the scanning. It's me reaching out and figuring out the world through this technology a little bit. And in the beginning, it was a shorter distance, and it seems to be that the figures have got bigger, the figures have got more complete. It originally was just the bust, just the head. The figure got more complete, and now there's more landscape and architecture involved. I don't think that it's going to just end up being a whole world of things made up by me, because that would be extremely difficult. But in my fantasy, it might be that it just grows and grows and grows until it becomes, a whole virtual space. But I think it's not really possible. But let me say something that I think is interesting about that, is that you are replicating real life by scanning it. You're not making it like in a computer game, a castle or a pit or a little village. You're taking from real life, but as time goes by, those things are changing. But you're keeping hold of this record, this three-dimensional record. And so there must be some sort of desire in me, some nostalgia to hold on to something. Yeah.
I was told it's a good idea to start a speech with a joke. Well, don't get your hopes up. I'm not here to tell jokes. I'm here to pick a fight. I'm here to pick a fight with second place. I have about as much patience for second place
as I do for flies
in my soup.
Sycamore tree, dream a little dream of there's always a feeling of happiness and release. And that's what the dream's talking about. It's talking about a release from tension. Freud actually believed it was a release of sexual tension, but we could perhaps broaden that to many other things, such as tension that's caused by a situation that's at work or in relationships or at home. Things that have been troubling you are maybe now put aside, and your soul soars free again in this dream. But certainly, it's a sign that things are getting better.
Thematically speaking, there's themes of male identity, social digitization, and contemporary culture uncertainty. Do those things feed into each other and affect each other? And what's your sort of approach to those sort of subjects?
To male identity, for example?
What kind of angle are you coming from?
Well, as one male identity, I'm a man. And so I'm talking from personal experience. Social digitization, which I don't know if it actually exists. It might be something that I've written somewhere, but it feels for me that I've made that up through the thinking of the way that we are now totally dependent on social media as a ground for creation, for social ties, of our generation. And so, going back to male identity again, my recent work in Cologne was talking about male identity, but as the culture of obsolescence, a type of male identity that has become obsolete. So I use brute bottles and things like trophies, like you'd find in a trophy cabinet, some teenage male in the 80s that had brute and trophies. Probably me, actually. Actually, it was probably my cabinet when I was 16. And I think it's something that is changing rapidly. And so it just interests me. I think it's all coming from a personal perspective. And me reliving little sections, little fragments, just like those scans that I make, through the performances or the, what would you call them? These scenarios that I'm doing, because just to make it clearer, I worked with the curator and I basically created this figure sitting on a piece of furniture. He was tied to it, and then he has these cardboard wings and a helmet, and he's quite a sad figure. And he, instead of eyes, he has these Google glasses that are made out of cardboard that have been sent to people in America. They're used for you to put your iPhone in, and it's a virtual, sort of a cheap alternative to the really expensive headsets, and you can just use your iPhone. So in a way, I was talking about how this male figure is trying to catch up, but he's got it wrong because he's got the thing taped to his head the wrong way around. And I don't know, they're all just little scenarios that play out fantasies of something psychological in me. It must be,
Music is important. You're talking about that, your background in music and how that's influenced your practice. You're talking about rhythm, seeing rhythm when you're looking at the registers in the film, in the programming.
Yeah, because I played drums for quite a while, and it's one of those things that just came up as I started to work with video. And because, again, I was starting to work with sound again, and I was able to go back to something that I did when I was a teenager, which was, the ability to drum at a good level is very useful when editing film or sound, obviously. But the way that the film is cued and the way that it moves is obviously helpful in the way that you can create affect in film or in an experience. So soundtracks are very important to me and became very important to me, rather surprisingly, because I'd not thought about it until I started working with the 3D sculptures, and because they were animations, they didn't have, by nature, they didn't have any sound. And what sounds you do, you know. So I started to use snippets of musicians and found sounds, and yeah, it's becoming more and more important for me. But the more, to me, the relationship between the visual and the audio is becoming more and more a way for me to communicate and have a dialogue with people.
You've kind of developed, from my view, you've got a very strong aesthetic. I could point you out from a sea of other artists. In terms of going forward, is it going to be a case of developing how you are, or you're going off in a completely different direction, or how do you sort of see that?
Yeah, I get what it's a very, yeah, I've been told this before. You know when you see that work, and I'm very aware that I don't want to get caught in a trap where people demand it. Demand a certain aesthetic, which is Charles Richardson aesthetic. But again, I'm really interested in exploring the scanning technology as a medium, and I think that's what makes it recognizable. The combination of the style of the performances and the scenarios that are then made into these 3D scans, that makes it particular. But again, I think people maybe comment on it being the 3D scanning itself that makes it very particular in itself. And I would say that I'm fine with everyone doing that, because I think it could be like painting or photography. 3D scanning could be just a medium. And because it's it's quite user-friendly. I mean, it's a bit funny and you have to know how to use it, but other people could use it. It's just the technology is lagging behind because it's not used enough, I think. I think the company that develop it, they don't seem to change much their apps on the computers, and some of them have become obsolete. So, and I can't use it directly anymore. I have to use it through my phone. Right. Yeah, because the app on the Mac has changed.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, and you can't update it to...
No, because they won't update on the browsers anymore. So there's a lot of technologies, and that's what's so exciting about all these technologies that are developed, and some of them veer off and don't have so much success, and some of them become really, really user-friendly, and everyone wants to use them. Perhaps that's good for me, perhaps not, but I do see it as a medium.